to enrich the future, not to avenge the past. How Jackie Robinson's compromise with Branch Rickey in Major League Baseball led to Robinson joining the conflict of the Civil Rights Movement. Baseball was invented in 1839 by a man named Abner Doubleday. When Major League Baseball was officially founded, the organization barred African Americans from having any chance to play. The African Americans decided to create their own league, and, in 1920, a man named Rube Foster founded the Negro League. African Americans from all over the country created teams so they could participate in America's favorite pastime. However, the players in this league didn't receive a decent pay, and they didn't have a wide audience. Furthermore, due to their bad pay, they often had to obtain side jobs, which is very difficult because they couldn't work half of the year. Jackie Robinson once said, "When I look back at what I had to go through in black baseball, I can only marvel at the many black players who stuck it out for years in the Jim Crow leagues because they had nowhere else to go." The color barrier in sports, and in baseball particularly, was a prime example of discrimination during this time period. The civil rights movement had powerful voices, like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., but they didn't have the voice of a prominent sports player. Robinson's talent as a Negro League player was unmatched. He could steal, hit, and field better than almost any other player. This made him recognized all over the Negro Leagues. When the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey, was looking for a new player on his Major League Baseball team, Robinson decided he wanted to play with the Whites. It was his tenacity on the field and his clever personality that drew Mr. Rickey towards him. In 1947, Jackie Robinson became the first African-American player in Major League Baseball. When he was signed, Branch Rickey asked for a compromise from Jackie. Robinson had to ignore any racism directed towards him. Through this compromise, Robinson earned respect because he proved to the public that he was calm and rational. The racism that Robinson faced ranged from death threats to coaches yelling slurs at him from the dugouts. Robinson was able to channel the anger and block it out so he could play at a high level. He had the most home runs in 1947, his first year in the major leagues. He averaged a .300 batting average his entire career and won a World Series. The Philadelphia Phillies, coached by Ben Chapman, were particularly bad to Robinson. Coach Chapman would taunt Robinson about his wife and children, and would constantly yell racial slurs. There was one particularly bad game when Ben Chapman had his pitchers try to hit Jackie in the head at every single at-bat. Jackie Robinson said, "I'd get mad, but I'd never let them know it." If he ignored all of the racism, people would respect him, look up to him, and maybe even defend him. Chadwick Boseman, an influential African American actor of the 21st century, said, "Some people would view Jackie Robinson as a very safe African American, a docile figure who had the tendency to get along with everyone." In my interview with Mildred Robinson, a retired member of the executive NAACP, she said,
He earned the respect of the people because, first of all, he had a confidence and a personal sense of security and understanding of who he was and what he wanted to do, and that he appreciated and respected other people, and understood that while he may not agree with them, they deserve the right to have their own opinions. And this oftentimes is not usually the way individuals think. That is, they will say they believe that, but when they, of course, are engaged in a situation where there are differences between them and someone else, they really aren't as tolerant. In general, none of us is.
By breaking the color barrier in baseball, Robinson led the way to integration in sports. "You are the foundation," Jackie Bradley Jr., a Major League player, said, talking about Robinson. After Major League Baseball, Jackie wanted to continue helping African Americans. He wanted to be able to make a difference in areas other than baseball. It was the respect that he earned through his compromise with Branch Rickey that made him uniquely important to the conflict of the civil rights movement. Robinson also wrote to JFK expressing his concerns for the African American community so he could try to fix the civil rights issues in his presidency. When Mr. Nixon was running for president and wanted to get the African American vote, the first person he went to was Robinson. He respected Jackie Robinson and could trust that Jackie would give his full effort because he genuinely wanted to help his race. Not only did Robinson write letters, he also participated directly with the African American community through protest marches to improve the quality of life for African Americans. Once joining the conflict of the civil rights movement and joining the NAACP, Jackie Robinson was able to speak for African Americans. What made him unique was the fact that he was a prominent sports player. Mildred Roxborough also said,
The fact that he was able to be in a position to be recruited by a national sports executive meant that the civil rights movement had made much progress in attempting to defend and promote the cause of blacks in a variety of situations. And one of the areas in which they focused and attempted to push and open doors was commercial sports, so that he became a person who made an ideal representative for the argument that the civil rights leaders had to get minorities, and more specifically black young men and women, admitted to the ranks of the professional sports arena.
Because of his background and his status as a cultural icon, Jackie Robinson was an invaluable source for those trying to win the African American vote. Jackie also made speeches to further African American causes, using his influence to put a spotlight on African American issues. An example of one of his speeches is when Jackie spoke out about the 1963 Birmingham Children's March.
I don't think you realize down here in Birmingham what you mean to us up there in New York. And I don't think that white Americans understand what Birmingham means to all of us throughout this country. And we think about the little kids being tossed from one side of the street to the other by the tremendous force of this hose. And we think about this picture just sickens me, this big brave policeman down here with his knee on the throat of this lady. And the problem of it is, ladies and gentlemen, is that this same picture of the dogs and of this policeman with his knee in the throat of this lady is a picture that's being portrayed throughout the world. And I think the conscience of America is beginning to awaken. I think the first steps that were made here by the Birmingham businessmen with Dr. King and the other leaders down here is an indication that perhaps the conscience of Birmingham is beginning to awaken. The only thing that we are demanding is that we be allowed to move ahead just like any other American citizen.
It was through his speeches like this that Jackie Robinson inspired other influential African Americans to become activists, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, an African American basketball player and civil rights advocate who once said, "All the courage and competitiveness affects me to this day. If I patterned my life after anyone, it was him, not because he was the first black baseball player, but because he was a hero." It was never intended for African Americans to play in Major League Baseball. Through the respect he earned from his initial compromise with Branch Rickey and how he broke the color barrier, leading a path for minorities, Jackie Robinson was able to influence the civil rights movement like few before him.